Man, give me some water. Give me some water. Come on, let's go. All right. Best of 2021, 5,000 to 10,000. This is like basketball. I'm getting water from the side. Let's go. Hey, how you doing? It's Andrew here from Time+Tide, and we are commencing our lists. It's that time of the year where we look back on all the watches that were released, and we usually get quite drunk sitting in the couches just over there and argue about them. Which were the best? What are our favorites? What make the lists for the year's best? We're commencing the process of telling you what that argument resulted in, and this is the $5,000 to $10,000 category. Can't wait to get into it. There's a lot of spicy ones in here, not all the expected, so I think it's time to go. But before we get too far into it, there is a bit of a tradition we like to do with these lists. At the start, we want to ask you, what are you wearing? Because I don't know if you can see what I'm wearing. This is the Doxa Sub 600T, just released last week. We are shipping out watches from Time+Tide, and I just saw one about to get boxed up and I had to grab it. It is the Sub 600T Shark Hunter black dial on a black rubber strap, and it just looks sexy. Look at that. What are you wearing? Why? Where'd you get it? Tell us everything. And also, to win a copy of the magazine that we're taking all our selections from, or most of them anyway, why don't you also tell us what you would spend $5,000 to $10,000 on from this year's crop of watches? Tell us below. Let's hear what you think. Right, kicking things off. The first watch we're going to talk about today is the Bremont Supermarine S302. I have loved the Supermarine for as long as it's been around. Going right back to videos, Time+Tide, we did one on a rooftop the year that it had been released. I love it. I think that it's a package of classic Bremont design, always with the NATOs. Like, it looks fantastic on NATOs. This is a striped NATO, so it has a really summery look. Again, we have that sort of vintage loom vibe to it, but it's a proper legit diver. Bremont's a brand that I think for anyone that's a contender in life coming up, wanting to shake things up, Bremont's kind of the same. They're trying to really have an impact on the Swiss watch industry from Britain. They've now developed their own movement. There's a lot to like about the spirit of the brand. I can tell you the guys who founded the brand are awesome dudes. And this watch, I think, is just an absolute looker. Again, the nice contrasting textures and finishes. Stellar watch, price of $5,600, size of 40 millimeters, right in that Goldilocks zone. Winning watch. That's the first one we're laying down. The second watch is none other than the Omega Speedmaster caliber 3861 with Hesalite crystal. And it just comes in a shade under 10,000 with the sapphire kicking you over the 10,000. So we're at that top end. But look, this caused an enormous amount of I wouldn't say controversy, because it's been coming for a long time. Finally, the movement was upgraded. Finally, the technology of now meets the story of yore. Not much else needs to be said. It's been one of those go-to iconic models that now has upgraded technology to go with you, whether it's to the moon or the mall. Tudor, the Black Bay 58 had an absolute explosion of iterations this year, and many of them were actually in the Olympic spirit of having a gold model, a silver model, and a bronze model. Now, the gold is one of those models that when released, we wondered whether this was ever intended to be bought, whether it was just something symbolic. However, it has appeared in lots of places. Again, that green and gold color scheme is quite attractive to us. But the models we've chosen, and we couldn't split them because they're great in their own way, and they're of the same concept, which is different materials for the Black Bay. So we have the silver model, which is the 925S maybe? The Tudor Black Bay 58 925 in silver. Now, this one really cut through because silver is not a material we see in watches practically ever, despite, you know, your grandmother and grandfather's silverware, and despite seeing objects from around that time being made in silver, very uncommon. Of course, there've been some hurdles and bumps in the road for this watch, as people have found that silver reacts differently to modern life and differently to normal life conditions. But I think the overall consensus is that with a bit of care and a bit of extra attention, you can have a different material on your wrist altogether. The silver is very shiny. It has a halo that's quite different to steel. And the way this comes together with the other tonalities of the watch, it's really quite beautiful, and it's definitely very singular. There's nothing that's been like this in any way this year or most other years. Also the bronze, which is a boutique edition. I fell for this watch completely, head over heels, impulse purchase at the launch of the watch. Have not regretted that one bit. It is a really tawny lion type of color scheme that I just find super. I found it really warm to wear through winter. Lovely watch, can't split them. The 925 and the boutique bronze edition Black Bay 58s are both watches I think worth collecting. The Rado Captain Cook high-tech ceramic. Now, this is a bit of a sentimental one for me because I was finally let out of lockdown. I don't know, we've had 7 or 8, 9, I don't know how many, 7 in Melbourne, and this was in between 2 lockdowns. I snuck out to Tasmania to launch this watch with Rado, and there's something about it that stayed with me. There's a smoked sapphire dial, so you can see the movement, hints of the movement through the dial. I think the fact that it's just super, super light on the wrist, the fact that it's, again, the Captain Cook story keeps evolving into something that's very techy. Like when you wear this watch, the original Captain Cook was very much a vintage reissue, very faithful. Everyone loved that it was a small vintage size. Forget all of that. This watch is very much a modern product of its time. I enjoyed wearing it a lot. I have good memories when I look at this watch, and I think it offers a lot for the money, and that money is $6,075. In case you're wondering, the Rado Captain Cook high-tech ceramic was 43 millimeters on the wrist. The Baume Mercier Riviera. Now this is an unlikely watch to be in the 5 to 10 category because there are versions of this watch that are very much in the 1 to 5 category. And that's probably a sweet spot for Baume Mercier, that value offering they bring at around that 5K, sub 5K price. The reason I tipped it over a little bit up to 6,600 is that this DLC black version is just a badass thing. The Riviera was one of those early watches that when I was getting into watches at a much younger age, I looked at a Riviera and thought, one day, dare to dream, this will be mine. Now, years later, they've relaunched the Riviera in a really exciting way. Like the Rado, they have smoked sapphire crystal dials, which gives you, again, a little bit of a look at what you're spending your money on, which is this mechanical movement. There's an array of mechanical movements that can be had in the Riviera, but for me, in terms of movement, bang for buck, the Baume, which has a silicon escapement, meaning it is impervious to magnetism, is the one to go for. Again, it's movement technology at an accessible price for something that's really very impressive. And the spec sheet for the Baume movement is super impressive. So great package, this badass blacked out model. I absolutely love it. It brings a bit more of a gangster vibe to a seaside Riviera watch. I like what Baume Mercier are doing with this collection, and it scrapes into this price point as a real contender. Carl F. Bucherer. Now this is a brand that you may have been watching Time+Tide socials through the year. You would have noticed that this watch is often seen on wrists in John Wick movies. And there's a great picture of Keanu Reeves with his colleagues from John Wick all looking down at their CFB watches. Now this is a particularly value-packed watch for $7,200 US, and that is the Carl F. Bucherer Heritage Bicompax annual calendar. And I'm a bit of a symmetrical person, and I really have issues. You can talk to me all you like about the golden quadrant, but I like symmetry. And I find that this watch offers me a beautifully laid out dial with big date, chronograph subdials in this reverse panda configuration. It's a real perfect hybrid of a sporty watch and a classic complicated watch. And again, at that price point, $7,200, you're getting fine Swiss watchmaking at a great price and in a great classic configuration and style with a sporty edge and a little sprinkling of Keanu. What more could you want? Up next is Grand Seiko. You just cannot avoid Grand Seiko in the $5,000 to $10,000 category these days. They've had a huge push in the last 5 years, and it's evident in the number of watches they have in this list. There are 2, but the first is the SBGM 245 and 247 GMT models. Now, that is an inky blue model and an olive green model, and they're mechanical GMTs. That is what the world was waiting for. When they were first released with their Explorer bezels, they were quartz. Everyone loved the watches, but took issue maybe with the fact that it was ticking. Those issues are gone now. And in addition to a buttery smooth sweep of the seconds hand, we also have what I consider to be a more proportionate package. We have 41 millimeter diameters compared to 39, and we have a sub 50 lug to lug, meaning that this watch locks up very nicely on the wrist. The price for both models is $8,500, and in terms of which one I'm going for, still tricky. Blue goes with everything, but I think green is going to remind us of this time because there are just so many watches that are green from the last 2 years. Rolex! We can't leave Rolex out, even though these watches are still largely inaccessible and becoming more and more mercurial by the day. The Rolex Datejust 36 with the palm dial is a watch I just can't get out of my head, to be honest. And I think maybe, I tend to kid myself that maybe there could just be a chance one mysteriously, like the dial itself, might appear. This is a very unusual watch on the wrist because this motif is etched in the dial in such a way that the way you move your wrist changes the way that the frond appears. Just, I think, quirky and colorful and characterful is what the world is seeking at the moment. So obviously there's a lot of bright colors in the OP collection, but I can't not put this one in the list. It makes it only by $100. It's $9,900 retail. Of course, it sells for much higher than that. If you desperately wanted one today, you'll be paying a lot more than that, but I still think it's worth hunting. I mean, there's a frond on the dial. It's like a jungle adventure. Great watch, have to include it. And yeah, admittedly, it's the one I've thought about the most since they were released. Tag Heuer! We had the Night Diver in the last category. Great watch. I was wearing the Carrera in the last couple of videos. Another indisputably quality watch that can be worn in lots of circumstances. But really, for me, when I think about Tag, I think about chronographs. I mean, that's the platform that the brand was built on. The legend of Jack Heuer was all motorsports timing. So this Tag Heuer Carrera chronograph ticks a lot of boxes. It is a hefty watch. We're talking about 14 odd millimeters of height. It's a watch that doesn't shrink from view on the wrist, but to me, it does everything that Tag Heuer are known for, which is sporty timekeeping, kind of the one watch vibe. Again, black dial is what I've gone for in this occasion. The olive green was nice, but let's go something classic here. And the price for the Carrera chronograph is $8,300. Doxa. Now, Doxa for many years has been associated with a certain style of dive watch from the 60s. Cushion cases, helium release valves, Jacques Cousteau, bright colors, steel, all of those things. Now in the 80s, when the watch brand was bought by another company, there was a 600T introduced, which changed that look. And then now, in the most modern era of Doxa, we have even bolder experimentation than that 80s version of the 600T. And that's exemplified by the use of carbon in the sub 300 range. Now the sub 300 carbon collection, of course, brings all those bright colors to the mix, as well as this very, very modern and quite progressive looking carbon case. Now that marries up beautifully with the integrated rubber straps, and altogether you still have a high performance dive watch, which is a COSC certified ETA movement at a price that is not pushing the boat out at 5,490 Aussie. So there you have it, the best watches of 2021 from $5,000 to $10,000. I expect you're gonna have some suggestions, some adjustments, so please don't hold back. We have just gone through our book, our trusty Time+Tide Now magazine, and chosen watches largely, or almost entirely. I think the GMT Grand Seiko was the only one not in here. So we have actually used that as a basis to make our selections. What did we miss? There were a lot of watches in that range. I want to hear from you. Thanks for watching Time+Tide. We'll see you in the next price category at $10,000 to $20,000. Let's go.